The neat thing about this bag, besides just the fact that it's got the watercolor technique and the buttons and thread sketching and quilting and couching around the edges, but the really fun part is that on the inside it has a pair of jeans. Hi, so I have kind of a cold, but I'm almost over it. And it's very early on a Saturday morning. I'm trying to get some of this filming done before my family wakes up. But one of the things I figured out really early on when I started quilting was that I didn't really enjoy piecing. But I really liked to free motion quilt, and I wanted to get good at that, and I really liked to embellish. And so for me, when I started this project, the video project, I joked with some friends that I would out all my bad habits before I was done. For me, piecing of any sort is a means to an end. All I want to do is get something that will add to my piece with this great look of many, many different fabrics. And so I've always done the piecing just as quick and dirty as possible and just get something you can quilt. And so for those of you that are real quilters who've done a lot of piecing, just do whatever you want to get something to quilt. This is something that I put together years ago and never made the bag that it was intended for, but you can see it's just two pieces that mirror each other. So these pieces match, these match, these match, and then they were intended to go on the size of a bag. And I don't know if I will use this for my bag or the one that I'm going to do with you. I have another one. When I was doing these wall hangings that I always called Colorwash wall hangings, I did this one. And I can see here that it's not really very perfect. You know, this row is a little wider than that one. And I think if I were going to actually finish this up at this point, that I would try to even a little bit of that out and make it a little bit better. But this was when I first started, and I called these Colorwash wall hangings, and they all had basically the same setup. I'm going to show one close up. I would always quilt the outside with a nice wide border that I called Peacocks and Rivers, and then I would do a same color binding, and I usually added a flower down in the left hand corner. And this one, I don't know if I'll ever finish this, if I'll just keep it somewhere. This is the one that I'm going to do my watercolor one with, and I like it to have sort of a broad border on the two sides of the bag. This one is 5 by 11. I think I'm going to do mine 10 by 6. So I have a little more length here, and so I might try to make this sort of a longer bag than I've usually done, and it's a little narrower than some of the ones I've done. So I'm going to do mine 10 by 6. I've used the fusible, and I always bought it by the yard, but I think towards the end of my experimentation with this, these two packets were like, 75% off on clearance, and so I bought this. But you want to find some type of grid, or I've drawn grid on interfacing, or you could work on fused. I've never done that, so I just went straight for the fusible. These are all wrong sides of these three fabrics, and these are the right sides of these three fabrics, and I'm going to use them both just depending on what I think looks right in each instance. So it's all coming back to me. I got down my little bulletin board that I just use it as a bulletin board now, but I always used it for this. And if you buy the grid by the yard, you don't have these wrinkles and so you might want to just get a small amount of it off the roll rather than get the kind in the package. But I'm going to use what I have. It's kind of hard to see these very light tan lines on this grid with this tan bulletin board behind it, but you can see it. Also, it would be better if your bulletin board were white, and you might want to arrange for that even if you had to paint it. I've painted a lot of bulletin boards in our house with flat wall paint to match the wall around it, and it's kind of a nice look. And so if you paint one with white paint, I think you'd have good results, and then it would be better for this. If you Google watercolor quilting or color wash quilting, you can see a lot of neat things people do. One of the things they do is use all the same fabric and then just work on in their print where their dark values and light values are, and then do a heart or just some interesting play with. I saw one recently that there was kind of a frame in the watercolor quilting itself, and then one area where the pattern spilled out of that frame, and that was gorgeous, I thought. So these 2-inch squares fit on here. If you're interested in watercolor quilting, I think this type of a thing is a nice start, because you can begin to see how the value issues work for you, and also you can work on learning how to do the seams so that you like the result, because it can be a little fussy to seam that. And then you can spend time doing one where you really like what you've got going in terms of if you're making a shape, such as a heart or a basket or whatever you might want to do with it. But I would work on these technical issues first of how to just work with this fusible and not drive yourself crazy. And one of the things that's really easy to do, of course, is get this to where you like it all, and then manage to have it fall all over. And I didn't have that happen very much, but I think I had it happen once and I never allowed it to happen again. So I'm not going to fuss with mine a lot, because I know how forgiving this is and how nice it's going to look even if it's not perfect. Before we go any further, I meant to show you some different ways that you can go about trying to decide if your pieces look right value-wise. This is a little folder cover, and I actually used this quite a bit when I was trying to really make that gradation of color. Using red is a little bit deceiving because pieces with a lot of red in them can be a little bit distorted, but you can really begin to see the value gradation of your fabrics. And of course this doesn't really belong here, but because it's a cow fabric and I always like to feature the same kitchen-y fabrics in the artwork as I do in the kitchen stuff, I'm going to allow that. You know, not too finicky, not too perfectionist type of things into this, because you're not going to really notice exactly what's going on with this once we do all our embellishment. And so for me it's a lot more time. You know, you could easily switch these, and if I were trying to make a heart or a tree, or there was a time when I wanted to do things like, we have old-fashioned lamp posts here in town, and if I had pursued that beyond the sketch phase, I'm sure that you know, I would take a lot of this a lot more seriously. This is one way. I have a little ruby beholder or ruby finder, whatever they're called, somewhere. Mine is broken. I cannot find it. If you stand back and look through a backwards magnifying glass, it'll shrink everything down, and sometimes that can help you find things that you don't like about your gradation of value. Another thing that works is to stand way back, and then you can see things. And squinting can help. My favorite one, of course, really is to just get a distance away from it and give some time before you finalize, especially for a wall hanging. For this purse, I'm just going to finalize mine. I'm just going to iron this down. Okay, so I've got my iron heated up, and I found my Teflon pressing cloth that I use for this. And I have these laid out pretty good. And so I'm going to press this down. If you don't have a Teflon pressing cloth, use just a scrap piece of fabric that, you know, you've determined is ugly, or it could even be, you know, cut off of a garment or an old sheet. Something so that you can keep the fusible off of your iron. You really don't want to drag your iron. You want to kind of lift it as you move it and then set it down, just so that you don't actually stretch out your backing. I hope it doesn't seem like a cop-out that I didn't do a layout that I worked on for a long time. I was tempted to just use the ones I had on hand, but I didn't want to do that to you guys. I wanted you to see the whole process. You know, I'm feeling pretty good about how this matches up size-wise and on my grid. And these aren't perfect, but if I sew straight when I'm doing it, they're all flat, they're all attached, and I think they'll all work. And it really is worthwhile trying to get this really well attached, because what happens in the course of this is they start to come a little bit loose. They'll start to pop off while you're still working on your seaming, and so you really want to spend a little bit of time at the end just getting this really hooked on well. I'm going to go all the way around very quickly with just a big basting stitch. After I stitched around this, I went ahead and took it over to my cutting mat, and I just trimmed it so that I don't have any extra. Throughout the video, I show myself making one inset. Of course, we're making two, and you'll have to repeat all the steps with your second inset. If you can see this line here where it's tan, I want that ideally to be exactly on the edge. And I'm going to stitch it 1/4 inch and do the best I can to have that line. Even if my pieces are a tiny bit off, I'm going to do my best to fold on that line and sew it 1/4 inch. And I've noticed that this tends to shrink, and so that you end up with a little bit shy of 1.5 inches when it's finished. And so I'm going to go ahead and kick my needle over one position so that I'm sewing one needle position short of 1/4. The instructions say to go the long direction first, so I'm going to try that on this one. When you do this, you'll feel some real drag where the fusible touches your sewing machine, and you'll need to compensate for that. Generally speaking, I think it's a mistake to start on one edge of something and work all the way across. I think it's better to start in the middle, work out alternating directions, so that you don't end up with a piece that gets more and more like a rhombus and less like a square or rectangle. Okay, so now I have this, and in order to make this work, what you need to do is take a good pair of scissors, and you want to snip in this location right up to your stitching. And it's going to be, if you look at this, here's one I'm going to snip right up to it, here's one I'm going to snip not really very close, and this third one I'm going to snip well past it. Because I've properly cut this all the way to the stitching, this one will press however I want, and then I can restitch. And I think the main thing is you don't want to stitch them both like this. You want to go opposite directions. This one that I didn't cut enough, you can see I can't get them to go every other direction because that's just not cut enough. It's gonna, on its own, it's gonna end up one side or the other, and there'll be a bulky seam right there. And it's already kind of bulky because of this. And this one where I stitched well past will do what I want, but I run more of a risk of having this corner in here sliding around and not really matching up the way that I want. So the preferred way to stitch it, or I mean to clip it, the preferred way to clip it is just right up to the stitching. If you clip that thread, it's not the end of the world, but try not to let that pull out of shape until you get it stitched. And then of course your stitching line is going to come right through here and it's all going to be attached. And ideally, again, you want one piece to go one way and one piece to go the other. So I've got this set down so that all my pieces underneath kind of drag and flip down one direction, sort of like that. And then I'm going to go with my iron across the top in the other direction. The first two rows are where I want them. So now I'm going to fold this so the third row is down, and I'm going to sort of drag it across my surface, and then I'm going to iron this direction and try to iron this down. So one more time, I've got my first 4 rows really starting to be where they need to be, and so I'm going to put my 5th row down. I'm going to kind of drag it the direction I want and use my fingers to fix any that aren't going the right way for me. And then I'm going to iron across this. And I'm not going to use a steamy iron, but I do like a little steam for this, so I'm going to shoot some steam into it. So now I've got 6 rows done. I'm going to check it out and kind of try to get this all pressed down. And I am using steam because now that I'm creasing fabrics, I believe so much in using steam that I'm going to use steam. Okay, so this piece is ready for round 2 stitching. So now we're just going to finish our seaming, and then we'll press again, and then we'll really be on our way. And I like to start in the middle. It may take 10 days to get the next video up, and I'm in a bit of a quandary whether to have the next video address starting to quilt and embellish this or starting the stencil. I did get more votes from people that wanted to do this version, and yet I know there are at least a few people that really want to learn how to do those stencils. So I might start with just the easy stencil instruction and do a shorter video for that and then come back to this. Okay, so this pressing is a little bit simpler because I really think it's just a matter of pressing it in a way that works. Now that I've got this, I'm just going to press it, and I'm going to kind of pull on it. I'm going to try to keep it square, but I'm going to try to get it to keep as much of its size as it can. So I hope it's somewhat square. It's pretty square. I'm not really loving the way that these, because I do want to have a pretty wide border, and so I'm contemplating cutting off one strip. So I'm going to square this up, and the way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to measure from this line here. I want it to be my 1.5 that's going to show, and then 1/4 inch for my seam. And so I'm going to square up all of these edges. It's warm outside right now, and I want to get out there and spray base, so I'm kind of trying to rush this. So what needs to happen is I need to make some decisions. So I think you can begin to see where I'm going with this, and my edges will tuck in and they'll be a little bit boxed at the bottom. And I'll have 2 straps. I could do leather if I wanted. Old belts are a good way to do that, or you can cut and dye your own leather, which I've done, and it gets really nice and worn in. And so we'll do some decorative stitching around the edge and stitch this, and I do like to do buttons on one side, and so this is where we're headed. After some agonizing, I've decided to do a 7-inch strip at the bottom in this brown fabric that I do like. I'm also going to do a 3-inch strip at the top, and then a 3-inch sort of border or sashing. I was trying to figure out how long it's been since I made one of these. I think I can safely say it's been more than 5 years. I started phasing these out and doing the stencil version because I needed to have artwork that would get me into better fairs. I wish that my bag were with an inset that was probably about 6 by 8 rather than the 6 by 9 squares that I have, but I don't want to redo it. And also, I think maybe I should have picked either a very light or a very dark sashing in order for it to show up on camera filming. But as you can see from this, there's some working back and forth to size the bag on the outside to the inside. Once you've made a couple of them, it gets to be sort of second nature, and it's just been a long time for me. And so I hope you'll bear with me. I hope there are some interesting things here, even if this particular project doesn't turn out to be something that you want to make. You can do anything on the outside of this bag. Basically what I have is a 7-inch wide strip that I've sewn in between my two inset panels and 3-inch wide border strips down what will be the top and the bottom, and also the two sides. And I did it as quickly as I could and didn't film much of it because I was trying to get outside and beat some weather and do a little spray basting. I prefer spray baste, and I like the type like I use that is repositionable, and when it's repositionable, you know, you have an opportunity to change things. I very rarely basted the top and the bottom. I usually just baste my backing to my batting, but I did baste this whole thing with essence of 505 because my can was almost empty and the temperature's dropping and it's the middle of winter. But it was a nice sunny day and we got up into the 40s, and so I ran out and did it. And the sun is still up. So this is my piece, and next time we're going to start doing some stuff with it, including the techniques that I've been talking about, looking at the other bag that I've been showing. So I hope you'll join me next time.